Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's going to be comparing the old Volkswagen Golf R to the new Volkswagen Golf R to see which Golf R is the best. Before we get in this video though, a huge shout out and thank you to the Ken Garff Volkswagen here in Orem, Utah for giving me some time with both of the cars. Both of these are still available for sale, so if you're interested, I'll include a link to their website in the description down below so you can check out what they have currently. And then on a side note, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into it. So powering the old Golf R is a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder that puts out 288 horsepower and then 280 pound-feet of torque. Now you could get this version with a manual or an automatic, a dual clutch automatic to be exact. This one happens to have the dual clutch. Now with the new Golf R, we have a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder that goes through either a dual clutch automatic or a manual. This particular one happens to have a manual. Now power outputs are stated to be 315 horsepower and then 310 pound-feet of torque. There are several sources that say that the manual has less torque than the automatic, but it's like back and forth on the internet, so who knows at this point. Now, before we go over the front ends, I do want to mention, if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Now, when it comes to front end styling with the old version of the Golf, I think it's a good looking car overall. I especially like this line here that goes across, obviously has the R badge integrated into it, and you know, it has the overall Golf shape. Now, the new one, you can tell that they've basically just taken this design and modernized it. Look at the headlights, for example. I do like this blue trim that goes across. I think that's pretty cool. And you guys can see, again, everything's just a little bit sleeker. And when you see them next to each other, it really just shows like the age of the old version. But let me know which front end you like more. Now, popping around the side, this is where things get fascinating. So tire and wheel setup on the old one, 235, 35, 19 in the front and in the rear. And guess what? The new one has the exact same setup, so that hasn't really changed. But notice the design here with the new one, and then you got the blue brake caliper, whereas the old one is definitely quite a bit more subtle with the wheel design and then also with the caliper as well. But regardless, here's the side view of the previous generation. I really like how the fenders kind of bulge out a little bit. It gives it a pretty aggressive stance. And the new one has a relatively similar design, except there's a little bit more going on. Look at the bodywork there at the bottom, and then the fenders, it's kind of more like a flush, so it's a little bit more sleek looking. And well, speaking of new versus old, look at the key fob difference. I mean, the new one has the cool R logo there on the back. So I think the new one definitely wins when it comes to key design. Now, taking a look at the cargo area, you guys can see we've got a cargo cover built in from the factory with the new one. And overall, cargo space is solid. And popping over to the previous version, it looks like the new one has about the same amount of cargo space. It might be a little bit bigger, but it's pretty dang similar overall. And then finishing things up with the rest of the rears, look at the evolution of like the taillights, for example, right? Somewhat similar shape, but different overall. But notice with the quad tips there at the bottom with both of them, that's pretty interesting. But yeah, again, the new one's a little bit more like harsh with the edges, if that makes sense, whereas the old one's a little bit more rounded off. So we're in the back of the old one first. Legroom back here is actually really solid. We got some vents back here, really nice leather seats. One of the things that's nice about the Golf is it definitely has like a much more upscale interior. You see the leather here on the door panel, and then headroom back here is also great. And in the back of the new one, it feels pretty much the same. This is a little bit different. It doesn't look as nice as the old one, actually, I will say that. These seats, however, I think they look really cool overall. Definitely a cool design. It's got like this like carbon fiber print here on the side. And then headroom back here, it's good. Well, let's start her up. Ooh, fancy. So first off, look at the steering wheel. This thing is pretty sweet looking. Obviously got paddles on the back because again, this one happens to have the DSG. I love how it says R there at the bottom. And then we've got digital gauge cluster here in the center, which is pretty cool. And we can change the driving modes, and they also show up here as well with the different modes that you can go through. And let's see what the camera system's like. Yeah, pretty solid. Overall infotainment system, I mean, it is not, I mean, we'll talk about the new one. It's not as modern looking as the new one, but it seems like response time is pretty solid. We got dual zone climate controls, heated seats, and look at the shifter here for that automatic. That's your drive mode select, by the way. I like the engine stop start in this one. And then you can see this whole center section. Just kind of paying attention to the overall like feel of the cabin. Again, this part though I do like in the old one. I think this is pretty nice looking. And then up top, that was kind of random. pretty cool. And then with these front seats, I'll move my backpack out of the way. Sorry about that. You can see the R logo there, perforated all down the center, really aggressive bolsters on them. And starting up the new one. So everything just looks a little bit more modern here in the new one. I mean, the steering wheel, for example, pretty similar design, but just kind of has a more modern appearance to it, especially with all the controls on it as well. And then same thing with the digital gauge cluster here in the center. And then that actually continues with the door panel. Like, look at this. And you got like the padding down below. And then look at these seats. I'm actually a huge fan of these seats. I think they look really sharp. They're perforated all down the center. And this one actually has a sunroof, which is pretty cool. Got the shade for it. And then if we pop it into reverse, yeah, resolution's a little bit better on the backup camera. Now, this has the infotainment system that I feel like has been super notorious. Now, I try to not watch other people's car reviews, but I'm a huge hot hatch fan, so I did watch some reviews on the Golf R when it first came out. And everyone complained about this whole infotainment system thing, because like here's like your volume slider control, and then you've got like that to turn stuff on the infotainment system. And then, you know, you've got these shortcut buttons down below, so I can press that for climate. For example, I can kind of hover over this, press that for the drive modes. And by the way, this has heated and cooled seats, which is nice. So you can switch between the different drive modes. You gotta accept, that's so funny. So, I mean, a little bit more customization with this one with the drive modes and everything, but the thing to note is, like the other one, you can just press a button to switch the drive modes, whereas this, it's kind of like all through a screen, so I can see how some people could have some complaints about that. And then again, this one has the manual transmission. So I guess this will also be DSG versus manual, and see which one I like better with both the cars. Now, when it comes to pricing, these new Golf Rs are like mid to high 40s, even low 50s, depending on options that you add to them. Whereas you can pick up one of these used, you know, last generation Golf Rs in the $30,000 range at this point. So there's a pretty big price difference between them. And with that being said, well, let's see if the new one's worth the extra money. Let's drive them. We're going to start off in the old one, take a trip down memory lane, and then we will drive the new one second. And then of course we'll sum things up with that. But I will say, like, the Volkswagen Golf R is such a cool car, and these hot hatches in general are really cool because, you know, they accomplish a lot of things. So it's, you know, a fun car, right, to drive, and you'll see that in a moment. But also, I mean, you can see it very practical, like really comfortable interior. Like, the seats are comfortable. It's got good space. It's got decent storage space. And that's why these cars are so appealing. It's kind of a positive feedback loop with these cars not being built as much anymore, because what happens is automakers release a new hot hatch. Everyone's really excited about it. Everyone wants it. And because everyone wants it, the market on them goes crazy, and, you know, the values go through the roof. And so then a lot of people get kicked out of the market because they can't afford the car anymore. So the automaker goes, oh, we're not selling that many. So then they stop building them. And it's like, if the automaker just produced more, so then the values wouldn't go so crazy, then on the hot hatches, then yeah, the market would just be so much bigger on these cars. More people, I'm telling you, there's a lot of people like myself that would buy these. But anyways, ride quality is really good. Let me see what mode we're in. So we're in comfort mode right now. I will say the DSG is really good. It's smooth, but it's also quick. Like, yeah, look at that. This is one of the few cars where you really can't go wrong when it comes to manual versus automatic, because both of the transmissions are really good. Some cars, like, you know, you go for the automatic version and it's like, kind of not the best thing. Okay, so we're gonna pop it over into, I guess, race mode. Why not? You only live once, right? So see how that is. It's pretty aggressive. I like that thing I like about the Golf is, like, it goes from being, you know, just kind of like a regular Volkswagen to this just aggressive, like, driving machine just when you change the drive modes. Oh yeah, you can tell that with the gear shifts, everything's more aggressive. Man, this DSG is so good. You know, those people that are in a camp, you can turn. You have a green arrow. Do I honk? You have a green arrow. You have a green arrow! My goodness! Ugh. Okay, anyways. Let's get our acceleration here. Man, this thing moves. See what the gear shifts are like. Wow. Like instant. Man, that's fun. This is a fun car. Yeah, love the transmission. The transmission definitely helps out quite a bit. So with the old Golf, I mean, old Golf, right? This car still drives amazingly well. The interior's really comfortable. The only thing that I'll knock this car for is, like, I can tell the suspension with this isn't as good as some other, you know, modern cars that are, like the new Honda Civic, for example, right? Like that has, I would say, better suspension. Well, let me go into, oh, I have to put it over here for manual mode. I'm like, I want to be manual mode. So I can just shift it myself because it's so fun. But yeah, I mean, other than, like, I feel like the suspension isn't up to par with some other modern cars I've driven. I feel like it's pretty solid, but I've never driven the new generation Golf R. So like now we'll pop over in the Golf R and we'll see if it's like a night and day difference or if it, you know, feels pretty similar. Now let's talk about visibility before we set off in the Golf R. Here's visibility of the hood, and hopefully you can now see the heads-up display. Both of the mirrors. Throw out the rest of the rear, and let's make sure this is pulled up right there. Okay, got that figured out. So, also got to get my sitting position correct. It's always interesting driving a different manual car. I finally own a manual yet again, so that's good. And that'll keep my skills up to date. Now, I'm driving this back-to-back with the previous generation Golf R, so I will be making some comparisons in this video because I'm using this video clip for both videos, and so, yeah, just kind of understand that. I was like, is that Toyota just going to go straight into me? Is that what's going to happen here? But right off the bat, I can tell you the suspension with the new Golf is a lot better. Both of these cars that I compared, they had the same size of tires, and this just seems like it does a much better job over the bumps and everything. And so that's all suspension. That's not going to be tires at all. Actually getting up and moving. Man, I really like how this drives so far. I mean, it's barely getting up and moving at all. But right off the bat, I actually like this transmission. A lot of people complained about the manual, but it's like really like precise in the gates, way more precise than the old version. Like this is a much better shifter compared to the old Golf. But you can tell it has been kind of tuned for like comfort, if that makes sense. That is for sure. Pop it into the sport mode now. Rev match here. Yeah, pretty good at rev match downshifting. This car is fun. Yeah, I mean, really, like, this is a good manual. It's, I mean, I wouldn't say it's, like, the best manual transmission ever, but it's really good. And, again, ultimately, if you don't like the manual, they make the DSG, right? But I think this is a dang good manual. That is for sure. Man, that's fun. This thing's fun. Well, we are finally going to be able to get up and get our acceleration here with the Golf. This thing rips. Like, once you get into the turbos, I really like this Nürburgring mode. Like, if I owned one of these, I think I would just daily drive it in Nürburgring mode. This thing's quick, and this manual is actually, again, it's really easy to rev match. Is it rev match downshifting for me? Let me see. No, it's not. I was doing that, so it's actually pretty easy to get it done yourself. I love how this thing drives. This is so much better than the old one. Holy crap. Man, I feel like I just spoiled the review. Still watch, please guys, I spent quite a bit of time doing the comparison, so still watch my comparison with the old one. But yeah, the new Golf R, it's a lot better than the previous version. I think it looks better. I think the interior is nicer. It drives better. I love how this drives.